Welcome to Dear Diaspora, a podcast celebrating the African diaspora and the changemakers, innovators, and entrepreneurs working to make our world a better one to live in. I'm your host, Ndulwa Kowa. Let's get started. So before I introduce the next guest, don't forget to leave a review, subscribe, and rate on Apple Podcasts. It makes a huge difference, and one key way that it does that is people are more likely to check out an episode or two if they see that there are ratings and if they see that people are actually listening to the content and enjoying the content. And one way to show that you enjoy the content is by leaving a review. So for everyone that's left a review, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you are listening on any other podcast listening platform, please make sure you follow the podcast so you're notified each Sunday when new episodes come out. And lastly, if you're listening on Spotify, you can actually share the podcast that you listen to on Instagram stories, just like you would a song. So if you're listening to Dear Diaspora on Spotify, you can share that in your Insta stories and I will repost. So of course, tag Dear Diaspora and I will repost, and really appreciate you spreading the word about the podcast. Happy Sunday, Dear Diaspora fam. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 28 of the show. I am so excited to introduce my next guest. I had a great conversation with Addie Elabor. She is the founder of dee-ya-nu. dee-ya-nu is a ready-to-wear bold print clothing line offering quality, trendy, African-inspired fashion at affordable prices. Addie was born in Nigeria but grew up in Philly. So during the conversation, we chat a bit more about that, the early days of dee-ya-nu, and how she was able to use Etsy, eBay, and Facebook ads to really get the word out about her business and grow her business. So that was super interesting to learn about. She actually launched dee-ya-nu while working a full-time job, which is just so impressive. And so she chats more about what that was like. If you have any sort of interest in fashion, marketing, and maybe starting your own clothing line someday, this is the episode for you. And be sure to check out dee-ya-nu at www.dee-ya-nu.com. The links to that are going to be in the show notes. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Addie Elabor. Addie, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you thinking of me and giving me the opportunity to be on your platform.
Absolutely. So let's get started by getting to know you a bit more. So where are you from originally, and where did you grow up?
Yep. So I was born in Nigeria and my family moved here when I was 6 years old. We've kind of lived like in Philadelphia and outskirts of Philly most of my life, except for when I went to school out in Oklahoma, actually, in the Midwest, and then lived in France for a year, and then came back to the Philadelphia area.
Oh, wow. And what was growing up in Philadelphia like for you? Like, was it pretty easy to adjust since you were so young when you came?
You know what? It was actually a bit challenging because when we came over, I still had a heavy Nigerian accent. And then I had to get used to American food and, make new friends. And especially when you have an accent and you're a foreigner, sometimes it's challenging, making new friends. And then people are looking at you and making fun of your accents. Um, and also adjusting to like the food. I remember growing up, I would go to school and not really eat anything because I didn't like American food. I didn't like pizza at the time. I've changed from then, but I didn't like pizza. I didn't like tater tots. I just didn't like the food they served at lunch, and we never really packed food from home. So I got really skinny because I wasn't really eating at school, and then I would come home, and then I would have like my first meal of the day, basically, because I wouldn't have breakfast either. But It was a challenge adjusting and trying to fit in because, especially as a child, you're just trying to, fit in and just be accepted. And I kind of like was ashamed of my African roots at the time, which is sad, but that was the case. But thankfully, as I grew up, in high school and really in college, is when I started embracing my roots and appreciating my Nigerian background as I started making, Nigerian friends, other African friends, and we were able to relate and I was able to appreciate where I came from better.
Wow,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that. I can totally relate. I think it's easier when you have people similar to you. Like I think
exactly.
there's not as much like you don't feel alone or really
Ex-
as isolated.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you have people who yeah, with similar backgrounds. So I totally relate to everything that you said. And I would say once I got to high school and college, that's when I really started to be just more proud of like where I come from and all
yeah,
those things.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Being proud to be different.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so, could you tell us a bit more about what inspired you to get into like fashion or become an entrepreneur? Did you always imagine yourself becoming one, or were you maybe thinking of taking like a different path earlier on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, according to my mom, she said when I was like in high school, I said I wanted to own my own business. And so when I did undergrad, I I got my degree in international business with a minor in French. And my dream job at the time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew like I loved all things international and I wanted to, and then business was just like a good background degree to have in order to get some type of job in the business world. So, and then after that, I went to France for a year, came back, and my first job was for like an e-commerce website called Pet Food Direct. And from that position, I learned about like inventory, merchandising management, and which is actually really, it was a great uh, experience for me that helped me with dee-ya-nu later on. And I didn't know at the time, it would be of help to me. But while I was at that job, I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing either. So I was like, what do I actually want to do with my career? And I decided that I wanted to work for a global brand, international company that would send me to a new country to launch new products into new markets. So then I was like, I want to get a master's in international marketing. So I went ahead and got a master's in international marketing at a university in Philly called St. Joe's University, and so that was really cool. And after I got that degree, I was looking for a job opportunity, but I couldn't find any. I was not able to land a marketing gig because at that time I was working for a company called VWR International, and I was a buyer for this company, and it was a lab supply company, meaning like they supplied products for, let's say, pharmaceutical companies, laboratories, whether it's in schools or wherever it may be. And I really didn't enjoy what I was doing. So I was really looking for a marketing gig outside of that industry, um, possibly in fashion or retail, something that's more interesting. And around that time, I was also reading this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it really motivated me. It created desire for me to want to launch my own business. And I started looking for an opportunity. And I remember, talking to a friend of mine, and she was saying like how she noticed African print at a Macy's, like on a dress, and her original idea was to source the fabric and sell it in the U.S. But then, as I was talking to another friend, I kind of got to this point where I'm like, you know what? Why isn't there a ready-to-wear African-inspired clothing line that is affordable? It's easily accessible. You go on the website, you pick out what you want, and receive it in a couple of days. And the sizes are like standardized. So I'm like, I was searching. This was back in 2013, and I was like doing the search, and I really couldn't find a brand who was doing it really well. I found like a handful of companies, but they weren't really doing well, and it wasn't like they didn't offer a wide variety of products, and they weren't prominent brands. So I was like, why not me? Why don't I start this brand? And at the time, I had no fashion background and knowledge of starting a clothing line, but I had such a strong desire, and was highly interested because I've always loved fashion. And then this was also in line with like embracing my roots, sharing my culture and expressing my heritage. So I saw it as a really great opportunity to first, build a company that I could believe in and create a legacy for myself and family, and then also combine my interest for fashion and sharing my roots. And it just kind of was a beautiful combination of all the things I was looking for, when this idea came to be. And I remember initially I was supposed to start the company with like 3 other people, thinking like we could all diversify our skills and we could all kind of leverage each other's strengths and cover all the bases and be able to launch a line. And then I discovered that they weren't as motivated as I was. And funny enough, one of like my good friends from college, she had promised like she wouldn't launch a company without her sister, but her sister was saying she didn't think that African print would be popular. Like it was trendy, but she didn't think it would be like it will keep selling. Like it didn't have a future, basically. Like maybe it'll be hot for like 2 years and then that's it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, well, I know, right? So I was like, well, since you feel that way, I'm just gonna start on my own. And the other friend, who I was also gonna start with, she was at school. She was doing school and working at the time, so she didn't really have a lot of time or focus or energy to pour into starting a company. So I just decided to start it on my own. And so I created a business plan, and I just listed, and I also created like a step-by-step phase 1, phase 2 of all the things I needed to do before launching the brand. And I just researched online. I got books on creating a clothing line, and that's really how dee-ya-nu came about.
And so, could you walk us through like those like the early days, like when you first launched and had, let's say the product ready to sell? Like, how did you first like start to get the word out and get some of those first customers?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I have a marketing background, so I understood how important it was to get on the social media platforms where I could reach my ideal customers. So I had Facebook, Instagram, and then I also started reaching out to like pages that promoted African print, so that they would post my product and then um, point towards my website. And the other thing that really helped when I first launched was like Etsy. I had like an Etsy store. And then I also sold on eBay. So when I first
Awesome.
launched my website, those two platforms were selling products faster than my own website. And because I wasn't able to drive enough traffic and awareness to my own website.
Mm.
But towards and then as far as like what that looked like in the beginning stages, I was a one woman show doing literally everything from A to Z, from designing to production management to marketing to customer service to shipping, packing and shipping the orders. And I also did like then and events in Philly, New York. Those were the two states for the most part. And then in that summer, so I launched in January 2014, and then at that time I was still working full time. So
Wow.
I was doing, yeah, so I was juggling both at the same time. But then I got to a point where I was really frustrated with investing so much time in a 9 to 5 that wasn't allowing me to do my dream job, running my own business. And I also understood that if I didn't give 110% to dee-ya-nu, it may not get off the ground because it's like it's more of an option than like sink or swim or do or die. I was very extreme. So so by May 2014, I actually quit my full-time job and decided to focus full-time on dee-ya-nu. And it was at a time when it wasn't able to support me. But I just kind of took the leap because I saw it as necessary. And yeah, so it was definitely a hustle. Like after that, I was like devoted night and day to figure out how to get dee-ya-nu profitable and really growing and getting traction. So I remember by, around those times I was doing various vending events, but you get sales here and there. It wasn't very consistent. So I was like racking my brain, like, well, how can I get consistent sales? And I knew like online was the way to go. So it's like, then the question is like, how do I drive traffic to a website? So probably around October of 2014, I came across this Facebook ad for a course by this lady named Amy Porterfield, and she was promoting her course on how to create Facebook ads to drive traffic to your website or whatever it is that you want to drive traffic to. So I purchased the course, and I remember it was a pretty big investment for me at the time because my business was not profitable. I wasn't bringing enough money to even sustain myself, and I remember it cost me $400, and I was like, "Wow, that is an investment." So after I made that investment and I started taking the course and applying what I learned to like creating Facebook ads, and I actually started seeing traction fairly quickly, like within, I want to say like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And by the first month, even half, like in a 2 week period, I had done more than I had done. Um, Probably, I had my biggest month, at that time. It was like November. I think I launched my Facebook ads.
Wow.
And then December was also, it was just kept on growing. I had a great no December, January of 2015, um, additional growth, and I just kept on growing month over month. And it was just like it was so rewarding to see like my hard work. Like I had been hustling all of 2014. It was now like kind of paying off, and I think it was really because I had that attitude of sink or swim. Like I needed to figure out how to drive traffic to my website in an efficient way. And since since I was able to figure that out, things started kind of growing from there.
Wow, that's so awesome. Yeah, I listened to Amy Porterfield's podcast, and it sounds like
Oh,
she
really?
has, yeah, she has some really great marketing content and tips like all the time. So that's
Yeah.
awesome to hear that you were able to take advantage and invest in yourself and take one of her courses. That's super cool.
Absolutely. And that actually made all the difference in the beginning for dee-ya-nu.
Wow, that's so awesome. And
Yeah.
so, what would you say has like, because I'm thinking back to your, you said I think your friend's sister had mentioned that she didn't think that African print would, I guess, still be relevant or still be as popular today. Like, why do you think it's remained as popular as it is today?
I think it's because a lot of African Americans are looking to connect with their roots, and we're like at a time period where it's like, people are very curious about their ancestors. They're taking their DNA test. They want to know where they come from. There's a deep-seated desire for humans to want to understand where they come from, right? So I think that really helped us out because a lot of our customers are people or African Americans who are looking to wear a piece of clothing that they feel expresses who they are and to better connect with their roots. So that has helped us a lot. And then beginning of 2018, with Black Panther coming out, that was also a huge like resurgent. Like it really helped revive, the desire to. They wanted to wear African inspired clothing to actually see the movie, and then after that, it kind of created like this atmosphere and this feeling that it's now more of a lifestyle, not just like I'm gonna wear it once in a while, and it's kind of just created like a culture of being connected, and that's really helped us out a lot.
That's super cool. And would you say at this point, like, have you seen more people enter this space? Like, like, do you have more competitors now or more people even trying to do like the ready to wear?
Absolutely. I mean, it seems like a new company is sprouting up every day. Every day, because I see, Facebook ads for other companies now, and it's really interesting. Sometimes it can be you feel like they're encroaching on your market, but in a sense I try to view it in a positive light where we can learn from other brands that are coming, and also it helps us stay on our toes so we're not like complacent and thinking like we own the market when it's far from the case. And then they're also helping us expand the market. People are becoming more and more aware of African ready to wear, African inspired fashion, and they are, yeah, they're, it's like increasing the interest for this niche market.
Wow, that's super interesting to think because I always think of, I think the typical African, like when you are looking for like African print, like a lot of people are getting things custom made.
Yep.
But then because you exist and, other similar brands exist, I think it's really cool to see more people like kind of shifting towards buying more of the ready to wear versus like getting custom things
Right.
made. So is that something that people like bring up to you? Like, oh, like, well, I could just go get this tailor made, or are people like, thank you for existing. Now I don't have to worry about, getting my measurements and, waiting forever for my clothes to be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of the reason I created dee-ya-nu, to eliminate that inconvenience and also expense, because when you're in the US, it's way more expensive to get clothing custom made than in Africa. So, and then also people who just don't have the connection to Africa, they don't have the opportunity to get it tailor made in Africa and shipped here. And we do get a lot of feedback from customers who are thanking us for creating products that they can is ready to wear. They don't have to order or look for the fabric and then find a tailor. All that inconvenience is avoided because we exist. So we definitely see that from feedback from customers.
Wow. And have you like do you have plans to enter like the wedding space? Cuz a lot of people, want their bridesmaids or they want like custom gowns and things like made for their weddings, but like one of my friends is getting married and we recently just decided to go with just regular bridesmaids dresses because we're like the thought of like finding a tailor, getting everyone's measurements on time,
Hmm.
making picking a design, like all that stuff is it just sounds like a lot. So we were
Yeah.
like, okay, we're gonna go with just regular dresses. But then if I could go on your website and be like, oh, like I can buy brides bridesmaids gowns that are kind of already made, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that's something that's come up for us as well. And it's something that we will probably, because even last summer, we offered some dresses that could have been used for bridesmaid. And we had some people buy our products for their bridesmaids actually.
Okay.
And that's definitely an opportunity to expand that category on our website. Um, but we don't want to do too much at a time because you can't do everything well, at the same time, especially with like limited staff and limited budgets and capital. So we're actually picking what we can focus on at a given time. When we do a little bit of like dresses that could double as bridesmaid dresses, but they could also be worn to any other occasion.
Okay.
But I think that that's a very good point, though, and that's something that's come up in our discussions as well, and we'll probably go into it more. Who knows? Maybe in a year from now, could
Oh.
add more of those types of dresses. Yeah,
Oh wow. Yeah, that would be interesting to see for sure.
yeah.
Um, awesome. And so you mentioned like, having access to capital and things like that. How how did you finance your business? Like it was pretty much you taking your money from your full-time job and pouring that into the business, right?
Yeah, so I basically, it was for my savings, my 401k, and a credit card. That's how I funded dee-ya-nu.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I mean that's awesome. I feel like um that's like a lot of people's story. Like they just, you have to kind of go through your savings and, maybe your retirement accounts to be able to have that capital. If you could have done it like any other way, looking back, are there other avenues that you see now that you're like, oh, like I could have done that instead, or no?
Um, I guess I wish I would have discovered how to use Facebook ads faster. I wish I had built out a team faster. Um, yeah, I mean, those are probably the main things that I wish I had. I just wish I had more support. And even now, I wish we had more support and more capital and yeah, and brains to like help us kind of solve some of the issues we're having. Um, but overall, I'm actually grateful for the journey so far because it's been humbling, starting from a small beginnings and just seeing how we've grown incrementally year over year. Um, yeah, I'm really grateful for the journey so far and looking forward to what else like we can do because we're always trying to figure out how we can become a household name. So we still have a lot of work to do in my estimate. Yeah.
Wow. And so where So let's say someone gave you like $1 million. Like, what would you do with that? Like, would you hire more people, or like, what would be the next thing that you would do?
That's an excellent question. um, yes, I would invest. First, I would invest more in marketing because you gotta create more visibility. Probably design and marketing I'll invest in, and then um, see who else we need to add to the team to help us grow business. But definitely marketing, design, um, yeah, getting more inventory. Yeah, and adding like maybe a creative director to help us with like brand improving our branding, photo shoots, and just creating an entire vibe around the brand that is consistent around across all our channels and platforms.
Oh, wow. That's, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's always interesting to hear, like, what people would do um, with that. But I think
Yep.
that's super smart. Um, and so, currently, is there like an entrepreneur or someone in fashion that you're like, wow, like they are just killing it. They're doing it right, and I kind of want to be like them. Like, is there someone who you really just really look up to out there?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I have so many people that I feel like I look up to. I don't really follow anyone closely, but there are people that, I come across, I hear their stories and I'm inspired by them. Um, from I mean, recently I was reading the book about the founder of Nike, Phil Knight. I just read his memoir last month, and that was pretty inspiring just to see how he started from humble beginnings as well. Um, but as far as other people, there's just so many that nothing even comes to mind right now. Because as I see a story, like I'm inspired by them, but there's no one that I really follow on a regular basis and kind of made them like my mentor, unbeknownst to them. But
That's
but I
funny.
mean, but one thing I do is like I listen to like motivational speakers like Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, and who else? Well, those are the main ones. But like, and even Oprah. I love Oprah. I love listening to her as well. And just people who they encourage you to have a positive mindset and a mindset that things that look impossible is indeed possible, and looking for ways to make your vision a reality. And it all kind of comes from your mindset and what you believe is possible about yourself and your life. So always keeping that in mind, and I listen to people who inspire that.
That's awesome. And so, do you see yourself ever like working on the continent, or like expanding to the continent in any way?
Definitely. I mean, one of the reasons why I started dee-ya-nu was because I wanted to give back to the community where I came from in Nigeria or other African countries in need. And especially, but as far, and my initial thought is to build schools or clinics. Healthcare is a big challenge in Nigeria and African countries in general. But it's still going to be a process to see how I can actually plug myself and give back in that to the continent.
Mm. And
Yeah.
and what would you say excites you about Africa's future?
What is exciting about Africa is always the opportunity, like the potential, because Africa is like the next frontier, and there's just so much potential the continent has, and it's untapped, whether it's with the natural resources, the people who are extremely smart people, or who are just unfortunate to be in countries that aren't thriving, and then just the opportunities in like different industries and sectors that could have potential growth. One thing I actually started researching recently was agriculture in Africa. I'm really interested in seeing how I could do something in that industry or domain. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of potential that the continent holds, and I'm excited to see us in the diaspora go back and give back in whichever capacity we're able to. And I always say that this to my friends, like if every single African in the diaspora went back home and did something, it will create a huge impact, because we do have the means, we do have the exposure, the knowledge to either, if you're, a doctor, going back to give free medical care, whether you are in the finance world, going back to give some financial classes, courses, whichever domain, like we can definitely go back to do something. And I am excited or hopeful that that would happen in our time, like where there's a wave of movement where we in the diaspora go back and do something to help our countries.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's definitely happening, and a lot of young people are thinking that way too, which is nice to see. So it'll hopefully continue on. But yeah, thank you so much. And how can people connect with you and, buy stuff from you?
Yeah, so check out dee-ya-nu.com. That's DIYANU.com. And they can also contact us by email at info@dee-ya-nu.com. They can follow us on Instagram. It's at dee-ya-nu. And also Facebook, it's dee-ya-nu Fashion. So yeah, those are the ways that you can check us out.
Awesome. I will make sure to include all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Addie,
much.
for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. Likewise. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to dee-ya-nu's website. That's www.dee-ya-nu.com. And follow dee-ya-nu on Instagram at dee-ya-nu. Thanks for listening to Dear Diaspora. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes. You can find us on Instagram at Dear Diaspora or visit our website at deardiasporashow.com. Thank you, and talk to you next week.